Hello everyone, Treasure again, your instructor for the 3D animation course in Blender. In this lesson, we'll be creating your first 3D animation in Blender. Please make sure to join our WhatsApp channel to access the course files for our lessons. Let's get started. The last time we were in Blender, we made a 3D render, and this time we are going to be making a 3D animation. So we're going to make things move in Blender. I want to believe we've watched the animation theory course because we're going to be applying some of those concepts in Blender when we start working right now. Let's go straight into Blender. So for animation, you will be primarily working on this section of the UI. So we've talked about this section, but this section called the timeline is where you'll be doing most of your animation. So very quickly, how does animation work? So in our theory course, we introduced you to three major concepts, which are frames, keyframes, and interpolation. So let's see that in action. As you can see right here, you are not seeing seconds on this timeline. You just see 1, 2, blah, 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 blah. So everything here are frames. So if you want to see seconds, you can come to this view and press show seconds, and it will look like seconds for you. 1, blah, 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 blah. But I think it is more effective if you use frames because animation is measured in frames, like I fully explained in the theoretical chapter. So right now we want to change this object's movement. I want to make it move over time. We want to make it move over time. So as we scroll over here, we want the object to move. So first we're going to go to where we want the action to start. And now to add a keyframe to your object, you need to press I on your keyboard. I for insert. So insert keyframes. So it's going to come up with a menu for you right here. So you can press I on your keyboard, or you can come to Objects, Animation, and Insert Keyframe. So you can see it right here. The shortcut is I here. So once again, I on your keyboard. And right now, everything you're seeing here is like Blender is asking you, okay, what property of the object do you want to animate? What property of the object do you want to change? Remember, in our theory course, we said that keyframes are records of change or types of frames that hold or types of frames that record a change in an object. So it tells you what do you want to change. You want to change just the location, which is the movement. You want to change just the rotation. You want to change the scale. Do you want to change both location and rotation, or do you want to change location, rotation, and scale? So for now, we're going to change all of them. We're just going to select all of them: location, rotation, and scale. Oh, sorry. First of all, you need to make sure that your object is selected. Sorry about that. And come back here once again, animation, insert keyframe. Just press I. Oops. Just press I on your keyboard and then select location, rotation, and scale. So you can animate all three of those properties. So once you do that, you will notice that the location of the object, everything yet on yellow, and this yellow object over here. By the way, to scroll along the timeline, you hold on your middle mouse button to move around the timeline, and you scroll out to zoom out, you scroll in to zoom in. So right now you've seen this yellow points here. This shows that this is a keyframe. This is the icon of a keyframe. So you can now move to the frame where you want the movement to end. And then once you do that, all you need to do is to move this cube somewhere else. So if let's drag this out. If we click on the move tool and let's move this object to the side over here, or maybe we just move it up, and then we can add another keyframe. So now it's over here, but if we just scroll out, it's going to go back to its original position because we've not recorded that other position that we want it to be in. So if we go back, and I think this was where. So if we Control Z right now, I press Control Z to go back to my previous actions. So if we just move this up here, and then we add another keyframe to record this position and say, okay, fine, this is the new position I want the object to get to. And insert keyframe, location, rotation, scale again. And now you would notice that in between this, Blender has automatically generated an animation. So if we press play, you would see that the object is moving on its own. And that is animation. That is how animation works. So right now, you notice we made just two keyframes, but Blender automatically interpolates between these two keyframes. So this is interpolation. Blender has used something like some mathematical formulas, especially 3D software. Especially 3D softwares, it has used some mathematical formulas to kind of calculate where the object should be in between these two frames. So all you need to do is to take add keyframes for the major changes, and then Blender will interpolate between them automatically. So now you have this animation in Blender. So right now, I want you to take note of this process. First, you insert a keyframe, your start keyframe. You insert the end keyframe. So first, I want you to take note of this process. To animate an object, you have to insert a start keyframe, which is a record of the properties of the object before the change will start, and then I insert an end keyframe, which is a record of the properties of the object after it has changed. So you want an object to move from point A to point B, you add a start keyframe at the object when it's still at point A, and then you now add an end keyframe of the object when it has finally moved to point B. That is how animation works. So this is all fun and lovely, but you can just save this project now and call it, go back to your page, to your folder where all your projects are, and just call this your animation demo, because this is actually a demo. This is not a real animation. So animation demo, and just save this. So that looks cool and all, but now we're going to make something a little bit more complex than this. Specifically, this video over here. This is what we're going to be making in this particular chapter. So what you need to do is come to new, create a new file, and now goodbye to that old file. And yes, we need to delete everything. Press A and delete everything. Then let's add a monkey, yeah, to our scene. Right click, make sure that is smoothed out, auto smooth. Okay, so we have our monkey in our scene. Move this out. Let us position him a little bit. So when it comes to rotation, press arrow to rotate. But then while you are in rotation mode, if you press arrow again, you kind of go into this freestyle kind of mode. So because of the animation we want the monkey to move a little bit lazily. So I think we can freestyle this. All right, let's switch on this here. All right, cool. So next thing I want to add, which is very important, anytime I'm making an animation, the first thing I actually add is my camera. But in this case, we just added our main character first, but it is important for you to add your camera early on. Like I explained in the introduction chapter, the camera is how the render engine sees what you are creating. So without a camera, you can't render anything. So let's add our camera, Shift A, and add camera. And now let's move him out. So right now he's looking down to the corner here. Let's press R to rotate on press, and while we're in rotation mode, let's press Z, and that will allow us to rotate on only the Z axis. So then turn it to face the monkey. And let's rotate again, middle mouse to look around. All right, then press arrow again. This time on the x-axis, we're going to rotate on the x-axis. So again, this rotation is the same as coming here, pressing rotate and rotating like this. Yeah. So now the camera should be facing our monkey. Yep, it's facing him. So if you want to come out, it's so close to him. So we can come to back to move to and just drag it out. Come back and look at it. So another way to move the camera as well is to press G on your keyboard. So while you are pressing G, now you are moving your camera because your camera is selected. So press G, press Z to move on just the Z axis. So press that, then press G and press Y to move on the Y axis. So we can move a little bit backwards away from monkey. All right, so at the first keyframe, let's animate our monkey now. So in the first keyframe, I want the monkey to be looking somewhere around here. Arrow to rotate on the Z axis. All right, maybe look down, arrow to rotate. Okay, let's just use rotation because that's easier to understand. Let's rotate a bit on the x-axis here by clicking the x-axis icon. All right, so want to be looking a little bit down. Let's increase the timeline button. Press I to insert a new keyframe. Now we will only be keyframing the location and rotation. We will not be increasing the size. So location and rotation. Then let's move this to like frame 120 because we want it to be 5 seconds. 24 times 5, right? Should be 120. So yeah, I want it to be 5 seconds, so that is 120 frames. So so let's say, okay, so let's say that by frame 60, we want the monkey to move up right here, and maybe he should look a little bit arrow again to make him a freestyle rotation. I would say like this. I'll rotate on the Y. I'll rotate X or X to rotate him a little bit up. Yeah. So arrow Y to rotate him this way. Okay, that's fair. Then add another keyframe over here. So now we've created our start keyframe and our end keyframe. And that is not really all. We want to add another. So one thing I want you to know about this timeline button is that this is your start frame, the start of your animation, and this is the end frame of your animation. So if you notice, this animation is just 250 seconds long, 250 frames long. So there are actually more frames we can add. We can add up to as many as we want, but it's only restricted to 250 because that's what we set here. So we are going to set the end of this to 120 because 120 is 5 seconds. If we come here to view show seconds, you would notice that if I move the mouse to here, the end here, you notice it shows 5 seconds. So let's go back with no seconds. So yeah, 120 frames is 5 seconds. So between this frame 60 and 120, let's see, I want him to look again around the town, around the environment. Okay, so something like that. Then add this keyframe. All right, so now if we come back and we play, we notice that the animation has started. Blender automatically created an interpolation between those animations. So one thing I forgot to say is that you know, even though this was our start keyframe and this was the end keyframe from one action, an end keyframe can also be the start keyframe of another action because a start keyframe is just to record the position or the change before, or the position of an object before it moves to a new position, or where an object was before change began. So at this point, this is both a place that we change it to and where I want to also change from. So just know that you can have multiple keyframes next to each other. That's not an issue. So it's just a record of change, like major changes. All right, so our monkey is now animated, and if you are playing back and you are noticing that maybe the playback is slow because of your computer, the best way to make it fast is to come to playback here. Instead of play every frame, change it to frame dropping. And no matter the spec of your computer, it will always play um, smoothly. It will always play it in the right frame rate. It's not going to be very slow, though it might be choppy. It might be skipping some frames, but it will make sure that you are timing your animation properly. So now if we go back to the camera, we first of all, let's still move it back a bit. G to grab on the Y, press Y to move on the Y axis, and let's move it away from him a little bit. All right, I think that is okay. Okay, so I think it's not even well positioned, so arrow on the Y axis. Make sure it's well. Okay, looks like it actually is it now, arrow on the Y axis, and make sure it's properly positioned. All right. I was noticing that these lines were looking like the ones aligned, so it wasn't properly positioned or properly placed. Okay. Another way to also manipulate the Another way to also manipulate the properties of an object, to go make sure that you are in this object properties bar in the property object property docker in the property bar here. Then make sure that for example, I don't want it to look as if it's tilted somehow. It feels tilted in my eyes for some reason, so I can just make sure that these on the y-axis rotation is 0, on the z-axis rotation is 0. So that's way it is properly aligned, and we know that maybe on the x-side you want it to be accurate 90. All right, so now it's properly aligned. All right, so if we play the animation now, we'll notice that the monkey leaves the camera side, and we don't want it to be like that. So let us come back, frame 1, add the keyframe, rotation, location, rotation. So yes, you can give the camera a keyframe, and if you go back to your camera on frame 60, maybe the camera should even reach there before the monkey. Maybe on frame 50, you hold G on your keyboard and press Z so that you can move the camera on the Z axis. And now move the camera around here. Okay, to look at the monkey. Okay, then press I to rotate. I to insert keyframe, location, rotation. And now if we press play, the camera comes up with the monkey. But rather than just stopping there, I want the camera to also zoom into the monkey. So G to grab on the G to grab and move it on the Y axis. I mean, what? G to grab moves on the Y axis so that it can come a little bit closer to the monkey. Oh, okay, yeah. Then add a keyframe, location, rotation. All right, so I just noticed a mistake, which is right now I was supposed to put the keyframe here in frame 120, but I accidentally put it here. So what do? Do I have to delete this? And by the way, if you click on a keyframe and you press delete on your keyboard, or X on your keyboard to delete, you can actually delete keyframes, but Ctrl Z we don't want to delete. Instead, like I said, keyframes are sort of in Blender, keyframes are objects. They are both special kinds of frames, but they're also objects. So if you click on this keyframe and you press G on your keyboard, which is G for grab, you can actually move the keyframe anywhere you want. So let's move into frame 120. And now the animation, the camera animates and it zooms into the monkey. So if we come out of the camera with our mouse, you'll notice how the camera is moving. It moves up, then it zooms into the monkey. So that is perfect. All right, so now let's add a few background elements. Shift A, let's add a cube. Move him. Make sure we'll now move to here. Move him, go to 0 to look at it from the camera angle. Put a little bit to the side. Be this way. Okay, increase the size. Want it to be quite big according to our reference video. Okay, maybe rotate it a little bit smaller, I guess. Still make sure it's going backwards. Okay, increase the size one more time. And now I want to scale it, I want to make it longer. So press S to scale, press Z so that you can restrain the scaling to the Z axis. And yep, make that, and that is cool. So that is what we want. So if we go back to our camera view, holding 0, 0 to go back to our camera view, and now to duplicate this object, you press Shift D on your keyboard, and you can duplicate this guy. So duplicate him and put a copy of him somewhere here. And it is advisable for you to, if you are duplicating objects, duplicate them before you add a keyframe, because if you duplicate them after you've added a keyframe, the objects might not stay in the location you've duplicated it to. It will just snap back to the original location where you had keyframed it earlier. So you have two objects on top of each other. So don't do that, okay? So cool, we have this guy here. Maybe rotate him, press arrow to rotate, Z to constrain the rotation on the Z axis, and maybe just rotate him this way, the opposite way. All right, so at frame 1, I want this guy over here to be way down. Again, I'll move to his enable here, move it way down, like way down. Then if we press I, we're animating just the location and rotation. And then by the end, if you click here, this jump to endpoints. By the end of the animation, let's come out. Yeah, that's where it is. Let's move him way up, somewhere around there. All right, so press I again, location rotation, and yeah. So if we play, we'll notice that he moves up. So if we press 0 to go to the camera view, you would notice that the guy moves up. Yeah. Very fast actually. So we're going to do the same for this guy, except he's going to come in from the other way. So this guy comes from bottom to top, this guy's going to come from top to bottom. So let's do that. Okay, move him upwards somewhere here. Right, to insert rotation, location rotation keyframe, come to the end here, then move this guy down. And press I again, location rotation keyframe. By the way, you can also toggle camera view by clicking on this button here to go to your camera view. So yeah, go back and you play. Now we have a shot of these two things intersecting through the camera. So now the thing is this: when it comes to animation, everything outside the camera does not matter. So it's as good as this is as good as it doesn't exist, because to the render engine you can't see them, so the render engine doesn't even consider them. So as far as you're concerned, they don't exist. So you can have a scene that is a little bit messy, have objects hiding in the corner, but so long as they are not appearing on camera, you'll be fine. The only downside is that if you have too many objects in your scene, it will increase your render times. So be cautious of that. So anyway, this is our current animation at the moment. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a bunch of objects. If you watch a video, reference video, you'll notice that at this point, some objects appear to pop out of the back of the monkey. So let's figure out how to do that. And you also notice that there are some objects at the background here that are moving at the same time, we're moving together. So how do you animate objects moving together without having to animate them one by one? So first of all, let's add a couple of cubes. Shift A on my keyboard, add a cube. Move it to this back here. Maybe rotate it a little bit. Use the rotate to rotate it a little bit. Okay. All right, cool. Then Shift D to duplicate. Maybe rotate this guy. Okay. Shift D again to add another object, press Z on the Z axis so that you move up, and reduce move to move it again. Then another way to also duplicate is to come to objects, press duplicate objects. So duplicate, move it somewhere here where you want it to be. All right, so press 0 on our keyboard. Yeah, they don't really do much right now, but we can adjust that later. So right now, if we want to animate, you know what, okay, cool. So right now, if we want to animate each of these objects, like moving up, and want to animate all of them together, so we can decide to animate each and every one of them individually moving up, or we can do something called parenting. So parenting is kind of, if you've used any creative program like a graphic design program or something, there's something called grouping things together. So all of them act as one. So instead of this isn't really grouping, it's called parenting here. And the reason it's called parenting is because you are taking an object and you are connecting it to another object. So that another object called a parent object is single parent object. So that parent object acts like a controller for the rest. So if that parent object moves, the other objects that are connected to it will move as along with it. So let's see that in action right now. So let's come to our cursor tool so that we can add an object around here. Click it somewhere here on this guy so the cursor stays on him here. Then add something called an empty, and an empty, let's say an empty sphere. The shape of an empty doesn't matter. So what is an empty? In Blender, an empty is what it is. It's an empty object. So what it does, what many animators use it to do, is to control things in an object, in a scene, without having to use an object. So these empty objects will not appear in your render at all. So when you are rendering, it will not appear. However, it can control things in your scene. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to take each and every one of these cubes and parent them to this empty. So when we move this empty around, these cubes will move along with it. So to do that, you want to select all the objects you want to parent. So this guy, we can select because we're seeing cursor mode. Let's go selection mode. This guy, hold shift, select this guy, shift again, select this guy, shift again, select this guy. And then once you've selected all the children, the people that you want to be controlling, you now finally select the parents, the object that will do that will control the other guys. So select the children first, then the parents. Select the parentheses first, and then the parents, if that makes sense. So once you've selected this guy, you can come to objects, parents, and objects. You can come to parents and then just click objects, and that will parent it. So you can do that, or you can press Ctrl key on your keyboard and press objects. So now every single one of these guys are parented to this empty over here. So if we click on this empty and we move it, the other guys will follow as well. So that's how you can control, and that's how you can control a bunch of objects with one you can control other objects with, you can control a huge number of objects with just a single object. So if we scale this as well, if we press S on our keyboard to scale, all of them scale along with it. If we press arrow on our keyboard to rotate, all of them rotate along with it. So, and mind you, these guys can also move individually from their parents. So if we move this guy here, move this guy here, move this guy here, move this guy here, it doesn't affect the parents. But if we just move this guy, it will affect the other guys. So let's go back to our camera view. I press 0 on my keyboard. Let's go to the camera view and let's, maybe adjust this guy a little bit. So right now the rotation of these cubes, I don't like it. So I'm going to press arrow again to give it a little lazy kind of rotation, somewhat. All right, that's cool. Maybe move this guy up here. Surround there. R again. So easy rotation. Okay, you two as well. R again. Okay, that's cool. Then this guy. R again. All right, cool. Now, these lines show that each and every one of these objects are connected to this um, spherical, empty, whatever. So, like I said, the shape of this empty does not matter. If we come to the empty, the property bar comes to this empty icon here. We can change the shape to anything. But I noticed the best is usually cubes and spheres. So let's just change it to a cube because these other guys are cubes. So now we can add a keyframe while this object is a keyframe here. What we want to do is I want it to appear when the cube goes up. So let's move up a little bit. And, uh, and I want it to move backwards. So far away from the camera. Press 0. Okay. Let's come to our end keyframe because this is where we're going to see it properly. Increase the size a little bit so that it's big in our scene, but I want it to be far away. And the reason I want it to be far away is so that it doesn't get affected by lights that much when I'm starting using our lights. Okay, so let's have that. Maybe move it on the x-axis a bit. Move it up. The z-axis, rotate. Okay, maybe rotate a little bit. Okay, cool. Maybe move this guy, some of these guys a little bit. All right. All right, awesome. So now we'll come back to select the empty. We can select it here, we can select it here, and then press I on our keyboard to move him over here to insert a keyframe. So this time we're going to insert keyframe from location, rotation, and scale because we want to manipulate every one of it, all these elements together. And okay, we'll take location, rotation, and scale. Then we'll come to the first keyframe over here. I want it to start off camera, so it shouldn't be visible to the camera. So let's move it out of the camera sides and maybe reduce the size a little bit. The first keyframe. So I location, rotation, scale, and if we go back to our camera view and press play. Okay, maybe that was a little bit too fast. That was a little bit too slow. So let's reduce the time it takes to get there. And okay, you know what? Let's go back to our first keyframe, come out. Maybe the distance was too far, so let's move this up a bit. Press I, location, rotation, scale, and if we go to our camera view. Okay, so you know what? Let's make it come forward at 60 frames, at frame 60, and then by this frame, we want it to increase its size. So let's press S to increase size a little bit. Okay. Maybe we should move these guys. Well, you see, this is how you touch up a lot of things in animation. So you end up finding yourself touching things and touching things and touching things. So, okay, fine. Let's say by frame 80, it will reduce its size a little bit. So press S to reduce the size. Press I, start location, rotation, scale. So now Let's come out here, scale it back to normal size. Again, location rotation scale. All right. So, so right now it's not really working for me in my eyes. So, well, okay. All right. So that's cool. So we're going to apply this concept of parenting one more time, just so you're a bit more familiar with it. So if you notice again in our reference video, you would notice that at this point, some cone-like objects come out from the back of this guy. So the back of our monkey. So how do we do that? So it's still the same basic concept that we showed here. So let's try that again. So this time, where's the monkey? Our monkey is over here. Okay, so shift A. I'm going to make a cone, and again auto right click, auto shade smooth so it shades itself properly. Press 1 to go to front view so you can see better. Move the cone up. Come to rotate option, rotate it a bit on this axis. Press the move tool, move it around. Okay, now hold Shift D to duplicate the objects. Then rotate it a bit. Now you know what? It's actually rotated inwards. I just remembered. So click on this guy, rotate it inwards. Okay. So let's go back to frame 1 so that the monkey is around. That way we can properly position these guys because they are supposed to rotate and point at the monkey objects. So let's do that. All right. Okay, Shift D. Rotate this guy. Still keep rotating. So I can actually be using shortcuts of G or Shift, select this other guys, of G, it's G to move, out to rotate, but I just want you to know that there are alternate ways, multiple ways to do stuff in Blender, and that's why I'm using multiple. Sometimes I'll use the shortcuts, it's muscle memory at this point, while sometimes I might decide to take the long way out. So if I want to duplicate, I can just come here, press duplicate objects, and now it's duplicated. So use shortcuts basically. All right. Then, okay. Shift D duplicates. I believe shortcuts are faster as well. Then Shift D again duplicates. All right. So yeah. All right. So I think this is a nice view. All right. So let's press 1 again to go back to the front view, or maybe Control 1 to go to the back view. And now we're going to add a cursor behind our monkey over here. So once we add a cursor, we can press Shift A and add an empty cube again. And this time let's move the cube OG, move to the y-axis, move it back a little bit towards these guys, and press now I'm going to print these guys to the cube, the empty cube. So select all the children first. Select all the children first, and then select the object you want to parent to finally. Then once you selected, then press Ctrl and P on your keyboard. And once you do that, click on Objects. So now this guy controls all of them. Now let's go back to 0 to look at our camera. And you know what? Let's move him closer to our monkey. Alright, so now that is done, you know what, let's press S and scale it out, because why not? Okay, so so cool. Now we have that done. So however, what I want to do is that I want it to come out at frame 70. That's when I want it to come out. So let's move them up. Yeah, so that they come out at frame 70. So now, if you follow the theory part of the course of the animation chapter, you might think that you have to start with your start keyframe first and your end keyframe last. So in some cases, now I'm going to do something crazy here, which is that in order for us to make this guy feel like it's appearing out of thin air, you press S on your keyboard and press 0. So what it has done is that it has kind of like collapsed the object into like a very, very tiny hole, a very, very tiny dot. So it's called a vertex. So it has collapsed the entire object into a tiny dot, and now you can't see it anymore. It's not visible to your eyes. But the problem is that once you've reduce the size to that 0, you can't scale it back to its normal size anymore. So if we were to start, so because we want the animation to start at this point, to start out at 0 and then become big, it is impossible for us to do that if we start with scaling it to 0 first. So what we do, Ctrl Z, is that we add the keyframe when it's a whole shape. So add location, rotation, scale here, and then we make another keyframe where we want it to be. Then we'll go back to create our start keyframe where we want the object to be before this change starts. So now we'll go back to like frame 65, press S and press 0 to mean that we want the value of all the axes to be 0. We're going to collapse the entire vertex, the entire object to very, very, very extremely small size, basically nothing, and then press enter. And now we're going to add press I to add another keyframe. So now if we play it, this, it looks like it just appeared out of thin air. So that is pretty cool. And why stop there? By frame 120, not only do I want it to appear, I want it to also rotate. So you can press arrow to rotate these guys around a little bit. Make sure we are rotating them in a way that pleases God. Okay, maybe move them a little bit up. No, it's fine. Then, you know what? Okay, yeah, cool. And press I to that rotation, location, rotation, and scale. And now, if we play it, now we have our rotation. So you know what, maybe at this frame, it should scale in a little bit so that these things are more visible in the screen. So press S, scale them down a little bit so they're a bit more visible in the screen. So I think it's cool. So press I so you can override the previous keyframe on top of the old keyframe by pressing I, and now rotation, location, rotation, scale. So this location, rotation, scale, if you want to actually be seeing what you are animating an object, you can see an arrow at the edge of the timeline here. If you click on it and drag out, you can see something called summary. So if that's not working for you, you can just press T. No, sorry. Okay, So click and drag out, and now you see summary. So if you click this down arrow, down button, you see here it tells you that the name of this object is empty, and what we are animating tells you everything, that all the elements have been animated. So it tells you, hey, what we're animating now is the transforms. And what transforms are we animating? We're animating the location, the XYZ location, the XYZ rotation, the XYZ scale. So it tells you these are the things we're animating. These are the things that we're changing. So these are the keyframes in your object. So however, for complexity, um, if you are looking at all of this, it can be going to feel too complex, but it's good when you want to edit animation. So for now, we are not really going to focus on that. So you can just hide these and just move it back. But just be aware that just be aware that it's there in case you want to know what exactly is being animated. So, okay, I think we are almost done with our animation now. You know what, at this stage when it comes out, I want you to rotate a little bit. Okay. Okay. And let's try it again. All right. I think that is cool. All right, so back to these guys at the back here. Remember how I told you that even though this guy is the parent of this other object, these objects can also move individually, so they can each have their own animation. So let's just give them a little bit of motion, you know. So at the first frame, let's add a keyframe to this guy. Location, rotation, that's what we'll be animating. And you come to the edge here, come to the end of the keyframe here, and press arrow on your keyboard. Arrow, maybe rotate him a little bit. Just to give him a little bit of small movements. Or you know what? Since this is already a perfect shape, let us add the keyframe here. And then in this other keyframe, we're now going to rotate him somewhere else. Okay. This arrow to give it a lazy rotation. So now if we press play, it's subtle, but there is some sort of movement on it. Alright, so click on this guy, come to the end keyframe because I like where the position of the rotation of this guy at the end keyframe. So the keyframe here, but at the start keyframe when it's out of the camera, nobody's seeing it. We will our arrow to give it a lazy rotation, any arrow rotation. Then press I to give it a keyframe. So we'll do the same for these other guys. Location rotation because this rotation is fine. Then before we start seeing it when it's still outside the camera, arrow again, press arrow again, and give a lazy rotation. Press I and insert location, rotation, keyframe, and same thing here. Last keyframe, to insert location, rotation, keyframe. Then at the first keyframe, arrow again, and yeah, we give it a different rotation. So now if we zoom come out, you notice that these things are moving. So that is the power of keyframes. So one more thing I want to do is these guys over here. I want it rather than just falling as a normal square or just a normal square. I want it to rotate as it's falling down. So now so now if you come to the summary and you look down here, you'll notice that if anytime you see this bar, if anytime you see like a orange color between your two keyframes, it means that nothing changed throughout those keyframes. So if you notice, the only thing that has a keyframe here and an empty space between this keyframe and this keyframe is the Z location keyframe, because it's moving on the Z location. The Z location is the only location where change happened. But these other things, they have like this whether light coloring or yellow coloring in between the two keyframes, because it tells them that nothing changed. So if you notice, we didn't move it on the X or the Y axis during the animation. We only moved it on the Z axis. So right now what we want to do is that we want to add a bit of rotation to it. So if we go back to the first keyframe and press I, now, if you notice on the rotation menu, it's also showing that there was no change in the rotation. So in the first keyframe, let's rotate it a little bit to side, maybe by let's say 100 degrees on the Z axis. So it's constrained to the Z axis, and press enter. So if we press I, location rotation, you'll notice that the rotation, Z rotation keyframe no longer has these yellow bars between it. It's just an empty space. So it shows that there was actually a change between it shows that there was actually a change between these two keyframes. So it's not just the same keyframe in both ends. So we'll do that the same thing with this guy. Um, you notice the exact same thing here. So the first keyframe, we want him to rotate maybe towards the other way. Maybe this time minus 100. I'll rotate on the Z axis. This time minus 100. The first one was plus 100. This one will be minus 100 because I want them to look as if they are rotating away from each other in the opposite directions. So if we press 0, go back to our camera view and press play. It's very subtle. Let's come. I think you see it here. Yeah, you can see that these things are actually rotating. Let's hide this guy so we don't confuse ourselves. So yeah, if you notice, you see that it's still both of these things are rotating. So yeah, now our animation is done. Basically, we've made an animation in Blender, but we can it's not good to just make animation in Blender. We're gonna have to render it. So if we press Z on our keyboard, Z, and come to material preview, or in fact, let's even go to our render previews, this one, Eevee. Yeah, the render looks ugly, very horrible. Remember, we need to set our render settings. So first add ambient occlusions on the distance to 200, put something crazy, trace precision, move it up, add bloom, add screen space reflections, make sure refraction is enabled, increase as many things as you can here. Cool. The reason is this color is because this is the color of the world environment. So if we change the color from this to something something different, and you know what, let's add a light, not just any lights. Let's add Shift A, add a sunlight. Yeah, I think that's cool. So a sunlight, the position of, if you notice the position of a sunlight, last time we added just a point light. So in this phase, we're going to be adding sunlight and area light. So just to see different types of light. So the position of the sunlight doesn't matter. What it does is that it simulates a sun in your 3D render environment. So if you press arrow to rotate, it will rotate as if press arrow to rotate. It would rotate as if it is the sun moving around the earth. So let's give this sunlight contact shot. Let's give it a color, make it yellow, because that's what we want to do. And this world background, let's just change it up. We'll do something about it. So um right now we need to give it a background. The world background is not enough, even though we want to make it look like it's in the air. If we don't want to make the animation look like the objects are floating in the air, we want a consistent background. The world background is not very good for us to use. So let's press Shift A and let's add a sphere. Increase the size of that sphere. Make it very big, big enough to cover our entire scene. Now you'll notice that it still has this let's go press Z, go to solid mode. You'll notice that it still has this squarey shape. So let's make sure right click, make sure it's on shade auto smooth so that it's very smooth. So now if press 0 on our keyboard to go to camera view and Z, go to rendered view. There's no much difference. That's because this sphere does not have a material. So let's add a new material to this sphere. Right now, so the last time I worked on materials in Blender, I showed you how to, give color to your material, make it red. So right now, if we make it red, it turns red. If we make it yellow, it turns yellow, blue, it turns blue, and so on and so forth. So you can give it any color you want. But today I want to introduce you to a new type of material called the emission material. So emission materials are ways, emission, it means that the objects will look like a light source. So the way we have a bulb is a physical material, a physical shape, but it's when there's light on it, the bulb emits light. So emission are kind of like objects that emit light, kind of like we have an all this a phone screen. Your phone screen emits light. So it will be very bright. So it will be very bright and it won't really be affected by shadows or colors of other things in the world. So right now, let's give it an emission color. Let's turn this to white so you know when I change the color. So let's give it an emission color, maybe yellow. Now you might not notice anything yet, and that's because the strength of the emission is 0, which is the strength of the shine of the light is 0. So if we gradually increase this, you'll notice that it becomes very bright. If we increase it too far, it becomes too bright. So let's keep this at, okay, maybe zero point 0.4 is alright for now. We can come to it later. And then let's give our other objects a color. Let's go to material tab instead of the render tab. Okay, and let's give our other stuff colors. So let's give our monkey like a, let's say, yellowish shape. You know what? Maybe a little bit red. Maybe let's make it a little bit reddish. And these guys, let's color them, make them okay. Then let's also give this guy a color, maybe make him a bit red too as well, but maybe darker. All right, so let me show you a cool trick to copy the color of one's object to another object. So if you want to copy the color from this object and copy it to another object over here, all you need to do is to come here on this icon over here, click it. No, don't click it, don't click the drop down, click on this icon here, click it and drag. So now when you drag it and you let it go on an object, that object receives that color. So now both of them are sharing the exact same material. So now if I change this color, both of them change their colors together. So that's a cool trick that you can use. So same thing we're going to do here. Give this guy the same material. So we're not making materials for each and every one of these guys. So all of them can share the same materials. And same thing, copy to this guy, and okay, then copy this to this guy. All right, that is cool. So this background, guys, this guy over here, let's give him a material, make him a dark, somewhat of a dark orange, somewhat, and maybe move him, we'll copy the same material to this guy over here. All right. So now let's go back to press Z and let's go to our render view. So now our scene still doesn't look good, and the reason for that is because there are no lights in our scene. Yes, we have a sunlight, we had a sunlight, but if I click on the sphere, so if I come to the sphere over here, select it, if we look at it, the sphere is selected, and we press this eye icon, now we can see the sunlight. The sphere was blocking the sunlight, us from seeing the sunlight. So the way to stop that sphere from blocking the sunlight is to come to this place. If you see under the emission, if you go down to where blend mode is, you come to shadow mode, you make sure that it has no shadow. So now this sphere does not have a shadow, so it's not blocking the sunlight, it's just there as a background for our scene and our object. So okay, let's take this sun a little bit more. All right, what I'm monitoring is this guy. I was trying to make sure that it looks cool. All right, so you know what, let's shift these guys a bit so they are not all on the same position and blocking each other's sunlight. All right, cool. All right, that's cool. So now let's add a few more lights. So first lights we're going to add is our key lights, the brightest light in our scene. However, the key light, then let's add, instead of a point light, let's add an area light. So what does an area light do? First of all, for you to see what's going on here, name of contact shadows. Let's increase the value to like 1000. Okay, so that's very, very bright. But you notice one thing. The light is bright, but it's not affecting this guy up here, and that's because in an area light only affects a small wherever this. Let's go back to press Z, go to solid mode. You'll notice this area light is has a direction or something. So wherever this direction points, if it's pointing downwards, going to face down. If you press arrow, let's use the rotate to rotate it, you'll notice this thing changes. So if we rotate it this way, it's going to affect only that way. So let's go to our rendered view. So if we rotate it around, you see it only affects wherever it's pointing to. So that is a way to know how the area node works, how the area lights work. So we're going to fix this somewhere. Okay, come to, let's press G to move it, make it come up a little bit. You know what? The thing about Eevee and the difference between Eevee and cycles is that in Eevee render, you really need to um, make it, you really need to bump up the lights to see much of an effect. So let's position this somewhere around here. So you know what, let's make an extra window over here. Remember, turn this to a crosshair, click and drag out. See, to render, press 0. Okay, this is what I'm looking at. I'm trying to make sure that we have this highlight on the monkey. So we can change the color of this to something yellowish. So this monkey is not really shading properly. For it to do that, okay, let's shade it properly. All right, cool. Okay, so these guys, let's make sure that they are very reflective by increasing the roughness and making them a little bit darker so they don't get too affected by the lights. All right, so I think I have the highlights I need. I really just needed it to like highlight the top of this monkey shape over here. All right, but if you notice, there are some very dark shadows around. So let's right click, let's add another light over here. Another area light. G grab, bring it out. G grab on the X axis. And now rotate it to make sure it's facing. Rotate to make sure it's facing the monkey. Sorry, arrow on the Z axis. Arrow on the Z axis. Okay, is it facing the monkey yet? Now what? Let's delete this. Try again. Okay, Shift A. Add an area light. Grab it. Okay. So if you notice, the distance of the light determines how much it will affect the object. So the best way to make it far away light to affect an object properly is to increase it to like, let's say 100. All right. So the reason this key lights at the back here could affect our objects because I have to increase to like 50,000. But if you're on cycles, you won't need that much um, volume of light. You can reduce it a lot to make it a lot look better in cycles. So let's come a little bit towards objects and maybe make this have its own color, a little bit of an orange. So one more render setting that we forgot to enable is to come down to color management, and under look, make sure it's very high contrast. So now the colors are popping for us. So this is why, like I said, if your render does not look good in Eevee, you probably haven't touched some of the settings in it. All right, so let's rotate this, make sure it's facing the monkey properly. And okay. And one cool thing about lights is that you can so if you notice when it moves up, it moves away from the light and it's dark again. But I want the light to follow it. So the cool thing about lights is that you can also animate lights like cameras and objects or 3D meshes. So you press I to insert keyframe here, and then when the monkey goes up, we also want this fill light over here to go up with it as well. So let it move up here. Maybe a little bit to the corner, or maybe come out a bit. All right, just enough. And insert a keyframe there. So now the light is always with him. All right, so let's make another light. You really need a lot of lights in Eevee. Shift A, another area light. Bring it to position. This one is going to light it from this side. Bring it this way. This on the y-axis. Let's say it's on the y-axis. It's on the z-axis. And let's increase the, come here to the light menu and increase the intensity of that light. $300. Maybe make the color of this one different. Maybe this one orange, or maybe blue, maybe green, you know. Just give it a different color. Okay. Now looks like this light over here is too bright, so it's really white. It's really washing out a lot of the color. So let's turn that back from 50,000 to, let's say, 10,000 back again. Yeah. All we need to do is just to bring it a bit closer to the object. All right. Okay, so we're gonna have one more light, this time directly in front, because you notice that these guys, they're a little bit too dark. So we need to fill some light there. Probably not very intense, right? I was rotate on the x-axis 90 degrees, and G on the y-axis to bring it to the front. Maybe increase the value of this one to like 100. The purpose of this guy is to fill in the color of these other guys over here. Let's bring this guy out a little bit. All right, so if you click on these guys and okay, cool. All right, so now let's click on sphere in the background and give it a proper color so that it matches the vibe we're going for. Make it a little, make color a little bit darker. Make it okay. We bring it down a little bit. All right, that's cool. Now let's come to the world and change the color of the world environment a bit to match what we're doing. Maybe if you turn to a little bit of red, you'll notice that anywhere you change the color of the world, it's going to affect the shadows. So the color of the world kind of like affects the colors of the shadows. So depending on what you want to do, the kind of color of shadows you want, you can change the color of the world here. So I want it to be a little bit accentuated with red. So maybe a little bit of that. Bring it down so it's the shadows remain dark, because if you bring it up, it's going to be looking very washed out. So bring it down a little bit. Um, cool. And I think that's it. So the hardest part, remember, we're done with animation like long ago. Right now we're just tweaking it to make it look good in our render. Uh, so right now these are two objects are too dark. I must have made them a little bit too dark. So now if I increase them a bit, they should look a lot better. And also let's change the rotation somewhere, because right now you can see that it looks a little bit too, it just feels too flat, because you can't really see the other side of this guy. So we can rotate, can auto rotate and rotate it so it's we get to see a little bit of its side while it's at this position. Then press I, but this time we're going to insert just a rotation keyframe. We're not going to touch the location. So insert rotation keyframe. So if you notice now, it still continues in its normal paths. All right, so same with this guy. Let it have a little bit of a, tilt. So it has a bit of dimension. Then I add the rotation keyframe, and now it looks better. All right. So, um, at this point, we're probably just, let's add contact shadows here. We're probably just, nitpicking on things. Um, Sorry, go back to real life. Let's move this light that is here. Now let's make another bar again. For some reason that light is just bugging me. So let's move him a little bit so he can properly light up these objects. Okay, so I'm looking at this, and maybe let's turn this to 5,000. Yeah, okay, so it's not too intense. Okay, let's leave the colors somewhat yellowish. And yeah. Then let's bring this guy closer to our monkey. So its effect is felt better. Let's make the green color is casting be a bit more saturated. And also this guy over here. Let's push him. This guy over here, let's rotate him. Okay, you know what? I think that's all right. So, I've said cool several times, and yeah, that is animation. It's basically doing the exact same thing over and over again, which is just add a keyframe at the start of your at the start keyframe at the start of your change to record the object before it's animating. Before the change starts, then add an end keyframe, which is the end of your major change, and Blender interpolates between them. And yeah, that is how to make an animation in Blender. It's simple. It's just adding keyframes, adding keyframes. So the more you do that, I'll challenge you to keep doing that several times, and you will get very familiar with it. So now that this is done, we can come to Eevee and press render animation. But first of all, let's save our projects. If you've gone this far without saving your projects, well done. Go to where you saved or where you are saving all your files. This should be our fourth file, I believe. So let's call this first animation. Save. All right, cool. So before you press render, if you come here to output properties, this is where it defines how your render will be. You can you see your resolution here. We talked about this, but this is where you define where you want the output to be. So by default, it's going to be on somewhere called temp um on your on your local disk. So if you press this place, you can change the location. So you can change it to go to the folder where you're saving all your files, and maybe you can create a new folder there. What I do is I create a new folder in that folder called exports, and enter into it, create another folder called first animation, enter, and enter and press accept. So once you accept it, you would show you the file format. Now, if since you're arranging an animation, you want it to be a picture, right? Actually, you can do that. You can turn it into an FMPEG video, but not really. Now, it is highly advised that you render as pictures frames. And I told you that it's highly advised that I render as picture frames. Now, if you remember, I told you that a video is just made up of still pictures being displayed over a high speed at a high speed. So the reason why I don't advise you to render as a video, you can do that if you want to. and maybe change this to MP4. You can do that, but I don't advise it because if you are rendering now and Blender crashes in the middle of rendering, that means all of your work is gone. So by rendering as a PNG, it's every single frame, it saves it as a picture, as a picture, as a picture, and then when you are done rendering, at the end we'll compile all the pictures together and make a video out of it. So if you render as a picture and Blender, so if you render as a picture, when Blender crashes midway through your um animation rendering process, your work is not lost. The previous frames you've rendered are still remaining. The only frame that crashes is maybe the frame that it was rendering at the moment it crashes. So if you are rendering 120 frames of animation and Blender crashes at frame 60, frame 1 to 59 is safe. They are just pictures on your system. They have been saved on your system as pictures. But frame 60 might be the only one that is corrupted. So if you want to start rendering again, you just come back and start from where you stopped, which is frame 60. You don't have to start rendering all over again. So if you render as a video and Blender crashes midway through rendering, you have to start rendering all over again. So make sure that it is in PNG or even any other photo format, but I personally use PNG a lot. So let us save again, save this, and we can press render animation. So this is going to take a very long time. I'm going to pause the recording and come back when the file, when the animation has finished rendering. So in the meantime, while the animation is rendering, go and make coffee, make tea, eat bread, something. If I scroll down, you see here, you see it's rendering the animation over here. So go out there, take bread, take coffee, take something, just have fun while it's rendering. Leave your computer to finish rendering. So depending on your computer speed, it might take a long time to render each frame. So just relax and allow it to render. So I'll pause the video and come back when it's done rendering. Okay, so very quickly before we render, I just want to do some quick adjustments here. So let's make this a little bit brighter so it can be more vibrant and not too dark. The original was a little bit too dark. That's just enough. And then make this guy, we make the original color of this thing yellow so it complements the emission color as well. We turn down the emission a bit to 0.5 so we have better control over the colors of the emission and doesn't like interrupt or mess up our stuff. So make this a little bit of a lighter shade of yellow. You grab it and push it around, maybe move it somewhere here, come down a bit, add a keyframe so it gets into that position. Yeah, I like that. All right, so this light was already animated, so if I wanted to apply any new movement to it, I needed to give it an animation, or else, for example, if I move it here because there's an animation or a keyframe, once I move the keyframe, it will reset back to where it was before the keyframe. So yeah, that was just to make sure that this guy had definition on his face. One more thing that I did was to make the camera go up because I noticed the camera was to make the camera go up. Let's see, move it up a bit because I noticed the camera was slightly off center. Our main object was slightly off center, so I moved the camera up, add a keyframe, location, rotation, and overwrite the previous keyframe. Then these guys at the back, I noticed that they pop out too early. I want them to pop out when these things are here. So I came here, this keyframe where they begin to move, before they begin to move when they're still off camera. I moved it, click on it, and drag it to move it around here. So now these things don't come up until these main bars pass through. And also, finally, this object over here. Finally, these circular visuals. I came here and reduce their sizes a bit so that they are slightly in the camera, slightly. Then add location rotation, and then I move these guys up a little bit so that it's a little bit within the camera. I noticed it wasn't that much in the camera, so I did that as well just to get it in there. So those are the little tweaks I made. It's not much. Yeah, then this one as well. Just rotated it a little bit so it's then moved it a bit as well. So it fits what we're going for. So yeah, those are the tweaks that I made to the render. Um, then yeah, this guy as well. His original position I wasn't feeling it that much, so I yeah, so also at this location, I also made the camera um slightly off center a little bit so that he's looking this way, so you want the camera to dwell with him there. So move it, take this slightly higher, and insert keyframe there. So they are very, very small changes. You don't have to do them. It's just up to your discretion. I'm just trying to be transparent. In case you ask, why does my render look different from yours? Yeah, because I did a few tweaks after the original render just to make it look a bit more pleasing to my eye. So this is what you spend most of the time doing in animation. So yeah, that's it.
A few moments later.
Alright everyone, so if you are done rendering, you should have a folder on your computer that looks like this. Just a folder that has a series of images titled 1 to 120. So when you have this, you go back to your Blender file, go back to Blender and save. Now you're going to create a new file, but instead of general, you're going to create something called video editing. Video editing. So select that. Now we're going to say add image sequence. Add image sequence right here. This is Blender. It takes you to something called the sequencer. So just for note, anytime you see this icon here, these are, you can switch to any of these icons. These are workspaces or these are Blender workspace. So right now we're in the video sequencer window. And now you can add videos. You can even edit videos in Blender. So yeah, we're going to add an image sequence. Navigate to that folder where we render that animation. So once you have navigated there, make sure that they are all named from 1 to 120. So they should be named sequentially in the proper order. Then press Ctrl A or A, just press A to select everything. So once you've selected everything, press add image strip. So once you've added that, it's going to add all your images as a video. So now it looks like it's playing as a video right now. So it's about 5 seconds roughly. That's quite short, but it's a start for your first animation. So now if you play it, you have an animation. Great. So now to export it, this time when we're exporting, since it's the video editing workspace, Blender has already implemented some settings for us. So for example, it has set it to FMPEG video. So it means when we render now, it's going to render as an MP4. Come to encoding here. Remember, this is in the output tab, output properties. So right now we still use MPEG-4, so you can change this output quality from medium quality to high quality. Then come here to navigate to where you want to save the file. So usually you can just save it. You can save it in the same folder where you kept all your Blender files, or you can create a special folder for it. So I'm just gonna call this my first animation. Press accept, and now you can come here and render animation. So now you'll notice that this rendering is super fast compared to when you're just rendering from your 3D scene directly. So this is just a lot easier, a lot better. So this is faster because it's not trying to calculate lights or calculate objects and all of that. It's just trying to compile a bunch of images together. So it's going to be faster. All right. So we have made that animation. Now if we go to the folder where we kept it, should be here in our Blender, because yeah, this is it. It's a beautiful MP4 file. If I click on it now, you'll see this is what we've made in this tutorial. So it's a very short animation, just to let you know the animation requires a lot of work. So this is your first animation in Blender. If you've come this far and created this, congratulations. However, before we go, remember we rendered this in Eevee render engine. So what about cycles, those who want to render in cycles? So the main difference that I have seen between rendering in Eevee and rendering in cycles, it's especially if you started making the animation in Eevee first, is that Eevee requires more light than Cycle. So if we hold on, let's go to our rendered view right now. So if we switch over to Cycles, we'll notice that our render will be almost too bright. Why? Because Cycles require less amount of light than Eevee. So if you were to render this with Cycles, what you would do to get it looking decent is to just reduce the intensity of the light. So it already looks decent, by the way, but you just want to make it look a lot more decent. So you will reduce the intensity of the lights, say maybe 20, and take this one here that is 300 to 50. There is one that is really, really, really bright over here in the back. So we'll take that to, let's say 1000. And the background, put that in like 1.2. Oops, that's too much. 1.3. Okay, 1.4. Okay, that's a lot better. Okay, then what else? The sun lamp. The sun lamp can stay the same. It's not really doing anything that's heavy. It's not really doing anything that heavy. Yeah, the sun lamp can stay the same. The world environment would have a larger effect on your work here in Cycles than in Eevee. So Unfortunately, it's difficult to preview what you're doing in real time in cycles, which is why I don't always like using it. But to each their own. Okay, maybe we might be able to increase this back to 5,000. Yeah, so that's perfect. So I don't really see much changes from here that I was expecting. So if we're to render this right now, let's first of all turn this to, remember to turn your samples to something manageable, like 1,000, and make sure this noise threshold is in 0.1 as usual. Color management is okay. Then, make sure it's rendering on GPU. I totally forgot about that. That was why it was taking forever to render. So, okay, cool. I can see how it looks, and these guys are lost in the back. Then these guys that we made dark, that were made white, we might need to give them a little bit of color so that they don't get lost in the background over there, because right now they are getting lost in the background. They are white, so whatever color is in the background is just hitting them and bouncing off them. So we might need to add a light over there to those guys. Maybe increase it up a little bit so that you get to see the dimensions of these objects. They are not just looking flat. They give it a color. Background is cool, I guess. Okay, maybe we shouldn't have deleted that light in the beginning. Okay, so yeah, that is what you would do for cycles, just to get it to look fine. The lights will, it automatically converts very well to cycles. So just that maybe sometimes you might feel like your render is a bit brighter in cycles than it was in Eevee. In Eevee, you have to like crank up a lot of lights, but in cycles, just a few lights, you've gotten a very beautiful result. So that's it. So if we were to render this, render and render image, you can choose render animation, but I'm not rendering the animation from cycles, sorry. And yeah, it's going to do its thing. And we're done. So that's how it looks in cycles. So you can make an entire animation out of that. It's totally up to you. So if you choose to use Eevee, choose to use cycles, it's completely up to you, depending on your spec, depending on what you're going for. So have fun. And that's it for your first 3D animation in Blender. Hope you enjoyed that. Again, like and subscribe, share, and if you have any questions about this lesson, be sure to leave it in the comment section. In our next lesson, I'll give you some tips on how to make your animation a lot better. So be sure to check that out.
Enjoy all these premium courses in this channel for free.
Time to take a chance to